Hello, it's Kristen here, and today I have a short video for you with some very subtle shoulder exercises. And these exercises are all about relaxing the shoulder, supporting the shoulder, and sneakily and slowly and gently encouraging the shoulder to move better when we move our arm, to support our arm movements better. Um, because there are many reasons why the shoulders may be in trouble. One of them is that a lot of us are holding our stress in our neck and shoulders, so that doesn't help when we're doing things with our arms, if there's that kind of chronic tension there. And then of course shoulders are very much more mobile than the hip joints. They have to deal with a lot of stuff as we're using our arms in repetitive ways, or we sleep on our shoulders. Sometimes we get into issues that require surgery or rehabilitation of some sort. So these movements that I'm going to show you are very gentle, which means that in most cases you will be very able to do these movements even if you have some complicated shoulder issues. Of course, there may still be, depending on what's going on in your shoulder, there may be some kinds of movements that you just should not be doing at the moment, perhaps. That's usually not something that lasts for a long time, but if you've just had surgery or you're in a really acute kind of phase with it, or it's really painful, do check with your healthcare provider whether you should be, whether there are any movements or any activities that you should not be engaging with. But on a general level, these are very small movements, no bigger than what you might be doing when you're preparing dinner or anything like that in some cases. But it's always a good idea to move slowly and to really sense, does this movement hurt me? Does it feel good? Is there a little bit of discomfort there, but it feels like it's a good thing? That's something that only your own experience can tell you as you're exploring. So be careful, try it out gently, and if it's painful, just don't push through it. There's no pushing through pain, but it's just exploring what feels good. So having said all that, what you will need is, well, I'm using these sort of spongy cushions, but what you could have if you don't have something like that, you could roll up a towel, something like that, like a hand towel or something a little bit bigger, so that you're creating something that has this sort of shape. I also use a squishy ball. This is not one of the hard prickly balls, it's really squishy. So if you've got something like that, that's very helpful. Or again, you can actually use the rolled up towel instead of the ball as well. So start lying down, and you might want a little bit of a head support cushion as well. You can just use any old pillow or a book with something on it, whatever works for you. And then we start lying on back, and you're just gonna roll up your towels or fold over your spongy cushions and put them under each shoulder. So basically you want to have a sense that when you're lying down, your shoulders are very much supported, maybe even a little bit pushed up. I'll take that out the way for now. So maybe even a little bit pushed upwards, like these towels or pillows or whatever you feel is useful for this, is supporting your shoulders, because quite often our shoulders are hanging out in space when we lie on our back. We don't have them flat heavy on the floor, and sometimes we think we should, but actually that's not really where our shoulders should live. So no need to press them down, just put something there to support them, and then just take a moment also with your head in a comfortable height to just lie there and feeling that support for your shoulders. So if they really want to have enough cushioning under your shoulders, that you're feeling this gentle lift up, rather than there still being space and your shoulders are still hanging in space. So they feel supported, and they can just drop a little bit into the support as well. And you might have your hands to start with palms down besides your hips, and then just start by just start by breathing. And as you breathe, and you don't have to do it in any particular way, if there's a particular breathing technique that you like that helps to relax, that's always really great, because the more relaxed the soft tissue is, the more calm we feel, the more relaxed the neck and the shoulders will be, and that will help moving that whole area in a more healthy way when things are not gripping and holding on. So you could just take a moment with that even. You could visualize that when you're breathing in, your shoulders are widening a little bit with the inflation of the lungs, and then they're kind of relaxing and getting heavy again. Because, you know, the whole shoulder girdle is really resting on top of your rib cage, which has your lungs in it. And this rib cage should really be expandable or flexible when you're breathing. It often isn't, but we might as well imagine that it is. And so the shoulder girdle will also respond very subtly to your breath. So even as you're just lying there imagining that, and you may not be able to feel it, when you imagine it, when you visualize it, when you imagine what it would feel like, it's incredible how the body actually starts joining in, literally facilitating that, what you're imagining. And it's a powerful thing. Now, the next thing you could do is your palms are facing down next to your hips, and you're going to keep your arms heavy on the floor, but you're just turning your palms up to the ceiling, and then you're turning them back down again. So of course, check, is there any pain with this? You know, this movement will mainly happen in your forearms or from your elbow down. But just as you do it, notice whether you can sense any kind of subtle reaction further up in the shoulders as well. And if you don't, you could again imagine that maybe the upper arm bones are slightly rotating along with the lower arm, so that there's a sense that when the palm is starting to face up, that arm bone is rotating outwards, and it's like this collarbone is giving out the upper arm. And then when you turn your palm back down again, it's winding it back in without any muscles having to grip and pull and do a lot. It's so subtle and supportive. And if you have an issue with particularly one shoulder, or you want to focus on one at a time, you could literally do what I'm doing just now and sort of encourage the idea of this opening with the folding up of the palm and folding down, with the other hand sort of stroking along, slightly drawing or rolling out in that direction and then rolling back in. Can be really interesting if you do it just on one side for a bit with the support of the other hand, and then you compare. Ooh, feel the difference in your shoulders. So make sure you're always doing both sides, even if it's just one shoulder that you're really wanting to focus on. Don't miss out on the quieter one and give it that as well. So then next you could, from here, your palms face your hips now, so somewhere in between folding up and folding down. You still have those cushions under your shoulders as you lift your arms up, and you're pouring all the weight from your hands down into your shoulders, and your shoulders can really drop into those pillows or into those rolled up or folded up towels. And you're not going to go very far overhead. So you reach overhead a bit. Let's see, I could go all the way to the floor, but I'm just going to here where I feel like I can drop into those cushions without my back starting to rise. So you're just allowing the back of your ribcage to stay heavy, and then bring your arms back again. And you may not even take them all the way down to the floor. This isn't about increasing range of movement as such. It's more about exploring this movement with the shoulders staying heavy on the ground, using the cushions to stand into or to drop into, and to explore this movement in a non-muscular way. It's so small. If you were holding heavy weights, it would be very different, and you would have to feel probably some of your muscles working. But in this case, sometimes we're sort of overdoing things in the front of the shoulder or the chest, or gripping and pulling and doing all sorts, when actually we can use the support, particularly with those cushions, to move the arms without really having any muscles overdoing anything. So you could, as you're doing this, some muscles will be doing it, but you really want to get into those deep, much more subtle muscles of the shoulder that they won't feel like they're doing a lot, because they generally don't do a lot. They do the subtle things, they do the small stabilizations. So you're getting to those muscles and you're relaxing them and bringing them back to movement, to stabilization, in that kind of sneaky, gentle way, by moving your arms like this and having a sense that those bigger muscles on the outside of the shoulder, chest, arm, back, wherever, are just getting out the way. They don't have to do this. This is easy. You see. So you could do that with both arms doing the same, or you could, of course, again, focus on one arm, and you could take a breath and then move your arms in opposite directions, so they could go to a diagonal as well. Sometimes it might also be nice to just leave your arms above your shoulders and just give them a bit of a circle, one direction or the other. And you see these circles are really small. I'm not going big. Again, I could go bigger, but this is really just about creating this heavy feeling in the shoulder on the pillows. So there's that. And then when your arms come back down, you could take those pillows away or towels away for a moment and just notice how the shoulders are dropping down to the floor now. Because they will probably have relaxed from that support that they had underneath, and now they can go into a little bit of a new place. If you feel up for it, you could explore the same movement here again and see how that is without the cushions. You don't need to, but it might be an interesting comparison. Then something else that I quite like to do without the cushions now is to take the elbows out to the side to shoulder level and keeping your fingers pointing up. And then it's like you're drawing circles with your fingers onto the ceiling, or with your fingertips onto the ceiling. And when you start small again. So as you're doing this movement, there is a little bit of movement at your elbow, but there is mainly this movement that's in the shoulder, again, of the arm bone turning in the shoulder, rolling in the shoulder, rotating backwards from the position you are and forwards or inwards. And the bigger the circle gets, so if you feel like, oh, I want to feel this a bit more, and this all feels fine, you could make the circle bigger, which makes you end up in a much stronger open position, as well as in a much more closed position. And it's important, if you get to this kind of bigger movement, really allow the shoulder to move. So particularly when the hands are palmed down next to your hips somewhere, that might feel quite awkward. The closer they come to the ground, the more those shoulders are starting to lift off the floor and poke forward, which is totally fine. Allow them to go there, because that means they move and they support where your arms are going. Yeah, this might feel a little bit more beneficial, sort of traditionally, getting that open feeling in the front of the chest, and the shoulders are heavy. But sometimes our hands have to also be down here somewhere. So we need the shoulders to be able to provide that, and we need to allow the shoulders to actually go there. Otherwise, if we then pull the shoulders back, it's just, we're fighting ourselves. We just don't want to get stuck down here. But in order to not get stuck there, doing those movements, going there and coming back the other way is just the thing to do. But really feel free to stay with small movements. Small movements really have power as well, and make sure you change direction. And then again, you could bring your arms down and take a moment, maybe also rolling your head a little bit side to side heavily. So if you've got often the shoulder and the neck get sort of involved together, they're very close to each other and get affected by each other. So allowing your head to roll heavily on some kind of support where you don't need to move or pull your neck around can be really useful as well. But we're sticking mainly with shoulders for now. And then let's go to either sitting, or you could do this standing up as well. And this is where I might use this little squishy ball. Please don't use a tennis ball or something as hard as that. Something spongy and squishy would be good. Or again, you could really sort of roll up a towel into a proper sort of big towel sausage thing. And then, this is a bit weird, you're going to put that, you're going to tap whatever it is, the ball or the rolled up towel, and tuck it under your shoulder. And it needs to be puffy enough and big enough that you feel like your arms are draped over it. If it's too flat, it will just feel like you're just holding a briefcase or something, or tucked something under your arm. So the whole point is that you want it to be sort of creating this arc that your arm is draped over. So I'm going to use the ball because that's a bit more effective than the towel, but at the same time the ball might sort of flop out, so it's not as stable. So you try out what might work for you. And then what you could do this with both, but I would do it on one side first so you can really focus on what happens there. And first of all, you breathe, and it's interesting when you're breathing here with something there, especially if it's a bit firmer than the spongy sort of cushion. The towel might work, I don't know. But what you might find is that when you're breathing in, you can feel how it takes your arm out to the side a little and lifts your shoulder up because the ribs are moving out to the side. And you're just going to do that for a while. Maybe even really emphasizing your breath into that side and really allowing this to move in that breath subtle way. And then you could just roll it a little bit. It's like you're doing a shoulder roll without losing whatever you've got tucked under your armpit. Let's do a bit of a shoulder roll. You don't have to hold it, whatever you're holding there, too tightly. Make sure you could roll both directions, but I particularly like rolling backwards because kind of going forward tends to be where we're already at. But you could certainly go both ways. Just make sure if you're going only one way, it would be better to roll backwards. And then again, just let that settle. And then what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze whatever it is you're holding there, like a sort of nutcracker thing on the out breath. And then you're breathing in and you just release it a little. And don't use brute force. Just think heavy elbow, heavy arm, and then good squeeze. Any tingling in the fingers or pain in the hand, leave this one out. It just may be that you're pressing on a nerve there that doesn't like it. Sometimes can be the case if the nerves are already sensitive. So don't ignore that. You might feel that something's pulling on the top of your shoulder when you're doing this. And that might be interesting to notice whether when you're doing that for a while or when you're holding it for a moment, whether that pull or that discomfort eases or whether it gets stronger. If it gets stronger, obviously you stop doing it. Quite often you'll find, oh, it eases off. It's just getting pulled, stretched a little bit, engaged, and then eases. But always be really aware of what happens when you're doing any kind of exercises. It's not about ticking off a list. It's about exploring what really works for me, what really helps. And then this is not so possible in sitting, so you might want to stand up, but I'm just going to stay here because of the camera setup. And you can give it a bit of a swing. So ideally when you're standing, because your hand won't touch the floor and you feel a little bit more stable perhaps. And then particularly if you're taking it out, and again you can compare left and right. I feel like my left shoulder has now really dropped. And then when you're standing again, you could give your arm a really good sway and see if you can really allow it to swing, and as it swings it drops, as with the momentum. Doesn't really work the way that I'm doing it because I've got to hold my arm up to not just push into the floor, but you get the idea. Do it in standing. And then just give it a bit of a shake. What's also good is at the end, just brush off your arm and your shoulder really from the neck down, brushing it off. Right, and that's what I'm sharing with you today. I hope you can play around with these exercises and they help you a little bit, and there's always tons more that you can do on the same level or adding a little bit more complication or a little bit more stability work. So check back with me if you need more. But yeah, good luck for now with this, and I'll see you around.